May of 2012, I spawned into what would eventually become known as the Old World for the very first time. Being brand new to this game called Minecraft, I had little knowledge of what my priorities should be. Fortunately for me, I wasn't alone. Joined by my friend Bagera King, we set out to see what this world had in store for us. Being the more seasoned Minecrafter at that point, with at least 3 days' experience, Bagera King knew exactly what needed to be done. He got to work punching trees and killing sheep, while I was more preoccupied thinking about what I planned to build. I wondered to myself why he seemed to be in such a hurry, as I casually began collecting dirt on this tiny little island we found ourselves on. But it wasn't long before darkness fell across the land. Bagera King raced underground, where he'd build a little bunker for himself to wait out the night. But I found myself completely unprepared for what was coming. Unable to reach Bagera King, I took out my dirt, and with some quick thinking, I was able to escape the approaching horde. But now I was trapped. With nowhere else to go, I'd spend my first night in this new world on top of a dirt stack. By morning, I was armed with a greater understanding of the threats this world possessed, and we needed to take action. Bagera King headed into the mines, where he began collecting resources while I started working on what would become my first build. For every chest he'd fill, I'd put up walls. Countless Minecraft days would pass, we'd work through rain or shine, but eventually, a base would be built. We now had protection from the dangers of the night, but this wasn't enough for Bagera King. He wanted a place to call his own, and he headed out to make that a reality. In no time at all, more people began to join us. Among them were two of Bagera King's friends, who went by the names Lieutenant Raziel and Teleiosaurus Rex, each of whom would quickly get started on their own projects in different parts of the map. Eventually, however, the two would reunite with Bagera King and help to establish the precursor to the modern-day community, a series of treetop bases arranged in a maze-like manner. From that point on, Bagera King would spend the majority of his time in the southern portion of the map, and although a railway system would be established to connect the two areas, for the most part he'd remain down there, and I'd usually be somewhere around the tower. Until one day I stumbled across Bagera King putting something together in my basement. He told me he was assembling a portal that would take us to Minecraft's other dimension, a place they called the Nether that was apparently very dangerous and filled with all sorts of things we'd never seen before. I had no concept of what was on the other side of that portal, but the idea of it intrigued me. So we assembled a group, geared ourselves up in iron armor, and we ventured into the Nether for the first time. Initially, things were going well. We quickly set up a bunker for protection, but our mission would turn into a complete disaster. Our group would be picked off one by one, with only Bagera King and Elite Triple X surviving this initial expedition. Sometime later, I noticed that Bagera King had returned to his original base. It had been quite some time since he had been there, so I headed down to see what he was up to. As I approached, I realized that he was filling the entire base with TNT. When I asked him about it, he said he no longer had any use for the base and just wanted to see how much damage this amount of TNT would do. He detonated the TNT. His original base became a memory, although the remnants of it remain under the dojo to this day. But how had he acquired such a large quantity of TNT? It turns out he had become aware of a duplication glitch involving a furnace and a shovel, and he, along with Lieutenant Raziel, had been stockpiling a ridiculous amount of items. But it wasn't until I was brought to his secret storage room that I fully understood the magnitude of what they had been up to. Now keep in mind that at this point in time, there was no economy or larger player base to be concerned with. There were no rules in place. It really was the Wild West in those days. But ultimately I believe that this marked the beginning of the end for Bagera King in Minecraft. By removing all limitations, he could now easily obtain anything he wanted, and as a result, the sense of accomplishment he got from the game had been stripped away. And this was something I'd learned myself shortly after, but in a different way. Things began to slow down from that point on. The world was a lot quieter than it had been, and I was starting to believe that our time with this game may be coming to an end. Mojang had released a new update which introduced creative mode. Without hesitation, I flipped the world to creative and got to work on my first creative mode build, the arena. But when Bagera King came to check it out, we had a disagreement. He wasn't happy with the fact that I had used creative mode in the world, while I felt it was a strange argument coming from someone who had an entire storage room filled with duped items. Nevertheless, he drifted from the game a bit. I'd continue on, but eventually come to the realization that I didn't get the same level of satisfaction from building in creative as I had playing in survival. So we returned to survival, and tried to enjoy the game as we had when we first started playing. We got to work on a simple but new base together, and it was kind of a fresh start without actually leaving the old world. But as time passed, I noticed a change in Bagera King. He began to wonder why we were doing any of this, and started asking questions like, what is the point of Minecraft? Then, one day, he just stopped playing. Eventually, I'd make the decision to turn the old world into a realm, and I'd reach out to him about potentially revisiting the world. Ultimately, he'd choose not to return, as he had simply lost the spark that had drawn him to Minecraft all those years ago. In 2019, Elite XXX, Dragon Ninja, and myself would put up a monument as a way of acknowledging his significance to the early days of the old world. After Rescue Lynn completed the new spawn building, the name chosen for it was the Bagera Dojo due to its location being the site of his original base. Although it's been many years since the last time we played together, I've always believed that if my first experiences with Minecraft hadn't been so memorable, it's possible that the game wouldn't have had the longevity it has with me. Bagera King will always be associated with my earliest days of Minecraft, and is forever a part of the history of the old world.